Joe never expected to have an experience that would completely change his understanding of life, faith, and humanity. What began as an ordinary day turned into something extraordinary when he faced death and saw something beyond this world. During his near-death experience, he encountered Jesus, who revealed profound truths that were both shocking and deeply meaningful. One of the most powerful revelations he received was about Black people, their purpose, and the divine significance they hold in the grand plan of humanity. Joe recalls feeling an intense pressure in his chest before everything around him faded into darkness. He felt his soul lifting from his body, moving toward a realm of indescribable peace. Yet, something powerful was pulling him forward, urging him toward an encounter he would never forget. As he looked around, he found himself in a place filled with radiant light, unlike anything on earth. In that moment, a figure approached him, emanating love and authority. It was Jesus. His presence was overwhelming yet comforting, and Joe felt an immense sense of peace wash over him. He knew he was standing before the divine, ready to receive the wisdom that awaited him. Jesus reached out and touched Joe's shoulder, and suddenly, visions flashed before his eyes. These were not just images but deep truths woven into the fabric of existence. Joe understood that he was being shown something significant about humanity, something that had been hidden from many. One of the first things revealed to him was the importance of Black people in God's plan. It was not about superiority or inferiority but about purpose, resilience, and a divine calling that had been misunderstood for centuries. What he saw next left him speechless. Jesus showed Joe a timeline stretching back thousands of years. He saw a people who endured immense trials yet remained spiritually strong. From the time of ancient civilizations to the present, Black people had carried an unshakable faith, one that had been tested through suffering but never destroyed. Joe saw images of great kingdoms, leaders, and prophets who had been chosen to carry wisdom and enlightenment. These were not mere historical figures but individuals anointed with divine purpose. They had faced oppression, yet their spirits remained unbroken, their faith unshaken. It was as if they had been given a special strength to endure and rise above any challenge. Jesus explained that their resilience was no accident. It was a gift, a testament to their spiritual power. Even in times of slavery, injustice, and suffering, they continued to pray, to hope, and to love. Their faith was a guiding light that would not be extinguished, no matter how much darkness surrounded them. As Joe absorbed these revelations, he realized that the world had often overlooked this truth. The struggles of Black people were not just a history of pain but a history of divine perseverance. They had been chosen to be bearers of light, to teach the world what it truly meant to walk by faith and not by sight. Jesus then showed Joe how much of this truth had been hidden or distorted. He saw how the world had manipulated narratives, making Black people seem less than what they truly were. This was not just a matter of history but a spiritual battle that had been ongoing for generations. Joe witnessed how powerful institutions had tried to erase their contributions, downplay their wisdom, and suppress their voices. He saw how media, education, and even some religious teachings had been altered to keep people blind to the truth. But despite all of this, the divine light within Black people had never been extinguished. Jesus spoke with sorrow, explaining that humanity had often divided itself based on appearance, forgetting that the soul has no color. What mattered most was the spirit, the heart, and the faith that one carried within them. He revealed that all people were created in love, but some had been given special burdens to carry, not as punishment but as a testimony to their strength. With tears in his eyes, Joe realized that the struggles faced by Black people were not signs of weakness but evidence of their profound spiritual role. They were walking testaments of faith, carrying a mission that the world had yet to fully recognize. Joe found himself standing in what seemed like a vast hall of light. The air was thick with a sense of peace, yet his heart was heavy with questions. Jesus turned to him, his eyes full of understanding, and said, "You wonder why there is so much suffering in the world, why some people carry burdens heavier than others." Joe nodded, feeling the weight of generations of hardship. Jesus lifted his hand, and before Joe, a vision unfolded. He saw the struggles of countless people, their trials, their hardships, their perseverance through pain. Yet, within the suffering, there was something else: strength, resilience, and an unshakable connection to faith. Suffering is not a curse, Jesus explained. It refines the soul, teaches endurance, and deepens faith. It is not meant to destroy but to build. Joe felt a lump in his throat. He had always seen suffering as an unfair burden, yet here it was, shown in a new light. He saw societies lifting one another, families passing down wisdom born from trials, individuals rising from despair with unbreakable spirits. Every struggle carries meaning, Jesus continued. Nothing is in vain. A deep realization settled within Joe. Pain was not the final story. It was a chapter in a larger book, one that led to wisdom, resilience, and ultimately, salvation. The vision faded, and Joe stood in quiet reflection, understanding that even in hardship, there was purpose. Jesus led Joe to another place, where he saw people looking into mirrors, their faces full of doubt. Some were questioning their worth, their purpose, and their place in the world. Joe saw familiar expressions of people who felt lost, unappreciated, or undervalued. Jesus spoke gently, "Many have forgotten who they are. The world has tried to tell them they are less, that they are undeserving. But I tell you, every soul is precious, made in the image of God, with a divine purpose." As he spoke, the people in the mirrors started to see themselves differently. Their eyes filled with light, and they stood taller, stronger. Joe watched in amazement as those who once felt invisible now glowed with confidence. It was not pride, but an awakening, a realization of the greatness within them. "No one is forgotten," Jesus said. "Each soul carries my love, my spirit. When they know who they truly are, no force in this world can break them." Tears welled in Joe's eyes. He thought of all the times people had been made to feel less than, how they had been pushed aside or overlooked. But here was the truth: God saw them, valued them, and had a plan for them. The weight of that realization was overwhelming, yet deeply comforting. Joe found himself overlooking the world, watching as people either came together in unity or turned away from one another in division. He saw both love and hatred, understanding and ignorance, peace and conflict. The future, it seemed, was not set in stone, it was shaped by the choices of humanity. Jesus pointed toward the division, the conflicts fueled by fear, misunderstanding, and the unwillingness to see beyond differences. "Division is not my will," he said. People were never meant to be separated by hatred. The greatest commandment is to love one another. Then, he showed Joe something else: people choosing unity, standing together despite their differences. The light around them grew brighter, their burdens lighter. They found strength in each other, and the more they chose love, the more the world healed. "This is the future I desire," Jesus said. "One where people recognize each other as brothers and sisters, where they see the divine in one another." Joe understood now: every decision, every action, was a step toward one of these two futures. Division was a choice, but so was unity. And the more people chose love, the more they aligned with the will of God. Joe was taken to a place where he saw people weighed down by chains. Some chains were made of pain, others of guilt, anger, or regret. He recognized them all too well: burdens carried from the past, wounds that had never fully healed. Jesus walked among them, touching the chains, and they broke instantly. Many hold on to their pain because they believe it defines them. He said, "But I did not create them to carry burdens forever. Forgiveness and healing are my gifts, but they must be accepted." Joe watched as some people held on to their chains even as they loosened. Fear kept them from letting go. Healing is not just about forgetting the past, Jesus continued. It's about learning from it, growing beyond it, and stepping into freedom. The vision struck Joe deeply. How often had he seen people hold on to anger, allowing it to shape their lives? How often had wounds been passed down because they were never healed? But here was a truth: freedom was possible, but it required faith and the willingness to let go. Jesus then took Joe to a place where people stood at a crossroads. One path was well-trodden, easy, familiar. The other was steep, uncertain, but filled with light. This is the choice everyone faces, Jesus said. To stay in comfort or to rise into purpose. Joe saw people hesitate, torn between fear and faith. The familiar was tempting, but the path of purpose was calling. Jesus turned to him. Many are called, but few choose to rise. To step into greatness requires courage, faith, and trust in me. One by one, people stepped onto the path of purpose. It was not easy, but with each step, they grew stronger, more confident, more aligned with who they were meant to be. I have placed gifts within each soul, Jesus said. Talents, wisdom, strength. But they must be willing to use them. Joe felt a deep conviction in his heart. Too many had settled for less, believing they were not meant for more. But Jesus was calling them higher, calling them to step into the fullness of their potential. Joe felt the weight of everything he had seen and heard. The visions were not just stories, they were messages, warnings, and guidance for the future. Jesus had shown him the power of faith, the strength in unity, and the path toward healing and purpose. Every soul carried a divine light, but it was up to them to let it shine. As the final vision faded, Jesus turned to Joe one last time. You have seen the truth, he said. Now, you must share it. Joe understood that this was not just for him, it was for everyone willing to listen. The future was not set in stone, but shaped by the choices of humanity. Each person had the power to change their path, to step into the purpose that was always meant for them. He felt himself being pulled back, the warmth of the divine presence still surrounding him. As his eyes opened, he knew his life would never be the same. What he had experienced was real, and it was meant to be shared. There was no more doubt, no more hesitation, only the certainty that the message needed to reach as many as possible. If you found this story meaningful, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Share this with others who need to hear this message. The more we understand, the more we can walk in the light of truth.